What's up, you guys? Welcome to Modern Music Expo, the online expo for the 21st century music creator. Today, I have a panel for you guys I'm super excited about. Of course, I'm really excited about all of them, but this one is going to be not only informative, but also really fun because it's with three of my really good friends. Now, first we have Elli Moore, who actually is legit my best friend, and also the other half of LYRE. So she's an amazing top liner. For those of you that don't know, that's basically a songwriter that writes melody and lyrics. She has written songs for bands like ITZY, Red Velvet, amazing K-pop bands, Fall Out Boy, Betty Who, a lot of different types of artists. I mean, these are also my credits as well because we are a team, so it feels kind of like weird to be rehashing them. But yeah, so it's going to be Elli. Then next up, we have Gino Barletta, who is a Grammy-winning songwriter extraordinaire, who's written songs for artists like Selena Gomez, Katy Perry, JoJo, Dea. He's just an incredible songwriter that I'm so excited to be working with so closely. And then thirdly, we have Scott Bruzenak, who is my favorite producer collaborator. We just produce so well together and have so much fun. And Scott has worked on a lot of the same projects as Gino. They've known each other for, I believe, like 10 years or something like that. And together they've actually developed the Dea project. All of her first songs like Sit Still, Look Pretty were written by them. And currently the four of us are actually developing Elli's artist project. So Gino and Scott know a lot about artist development from this project that we're all working on and from the Dea project as well. Of course, Elli and I also developed her artist project in the earlier days and a lot of other artists. So I feel like the four of us have a lot of really good information about this topic. And I know that a lot of you guys have asked a lot of questions about this topic, like how do I even know what my sound is? How do I develop other artists? How do I figure out what they want versus what they need? How do I marry those things? So we're going to address all of that today in this panel. And without further ado, let's just get to it. All right, you guys, so I'm here with Gino, Elli, and Scott, who are some of my best friends. So this panel will probably be a little bit different than some of the others. Like, we'll try to keep our inappropriateness to a minimum, but no promises. But anyway, as I mentioned, this panel is all about artist development. So, and to dive a little bit deeper into that, the four of us are currently developing Elli, which is, it's kind of funny because she's definitely part of the development process, being an accomplished songwriter and everything herself. But, the three of us are kind of helping with the process. And Gino and Scott particularly have had a lot of experience developing artists in the past. So yeah, I just kind of want to dive in. This is going to be funny because obviously I think I know answers to these questions, but for those who are watching, I want to hear a little bit about the biggest difference between writing for pitch and writing with artists. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Your songs come out. 9 times out of 10.
I mean, actually, do explain that because we are all laughing. It's a seriously funny thing, but for people that are a little bit newer, that's actually a really great point.
I feel like probably the most obvious reason why you would actually see the work that you're doing is because the artist is generally there in the room. So you kind of get a yes or no from the jump of whether it's fitting for the project or true to the artist or something that they're really standing behind or passionate about wanting to share. Whereas when you're writing blindly for pitch, you're kind of guessing what this artist who you may have never even met before would want to say or what they would want it to sound like. And I feel like we all collectively can vouch that we have experience of creating something that we feel is perfectly on the nose of what the prompt is for the pitch. And then you send 10 of those, perfect songs in, and then every single one, gets the feedback from the A&R. This is totally not what we're looking for. This isn't what she's feeling, or this isn't what we're going for. And having that artist there hands-on in the process, I think just kind of locks in the odds of the music actually going from beginning to end and then being released.
It's super true. And I want to just add for those that don't know about briefs and pitches. So a lot of the times with record label representatives, A&Rs, they will kind of send information out basically to songwriters and producers like, hey, like blah 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 is looking for this kind of sound. But a lot of the times they're like still trying to find it. So they don't really know. So we can as a group try to really match it. And then like Gino said, it can be very hit or
Well,
miss.
it's also like artists go through different things all the time, and inspiration can spark in different ways. So like you're saying, Gino, it's like when you're in the room with someone, you are in real time there to help develop what the artist is actually going through in the moment. And it can really dial in, from the horse's mouth. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And the
We
problem
like working with horses.
I'm a horse girl.
You want to work with the horse so you can hear it from the horse's mouth.
What were you saying, Scott?
Well, from my perspective, a big problem with writing for pitch is always that a lot of the language, like the A&Rs or even the artists themselves use, is ambiguous by design. Like a lot of words in music tend to be ambiguous. So unless you're sitting with someone and you're like, wait a second, what do you mean by that word? And then they play you a song where you're like, oh, I get it. That's what that word means to you.
Edgy hit. We need an edgy hit.
Yeah, like what is it? Or like the joke in the industry used to be like everybody wanted something that was like vibey and edgy.
What does that mean?
And you're like, what does that mean? What does it mean
big.
now? Yeah, and big and like commercial. Good, thank you.
Yes. All right, awesome. I will really narrow that down as best I can.
It's so much easier writing for artists when they're in the room, just because like at least they'll have the memory of writing the song, and then they have an emotional attachment to it. And plenty more has happened in my career working directly with artists than trying to pitch for things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so true. I would just say the only kind of exception is K-pop, because the artists in most of the times don't write the songs they don't aspire to. Like it's very divided there. There's like the writers and producers, and then I mean not just K-pop, just Asian pop, like Mando pop, J-pop. A lot of the times they don't write, so they just want the best songs. So and a lot of the times the A&Rs are so specific that if you write that, you probably will get it. We've had instances like that where we give them exactly what they asked for and they like it. But that's that market. Like we're talking about the US, and it's not so straightforward here.
Yeah, I've had that experience too of like getting a reference and then we just basically like nailed the reference and then got a cut that way. Like so that is true with K-pop. I've had that experience too.
Yeah, but it is interesting how like developing artists, it is like you said, Ellie, I think said that it's like the emotional connection that they have to the song that really helps kind of bolster the whole project, really, because if that artist goes back to the A&Rs and they're like, I really, really love that, I mean, that really helps.
Yeah, and it's like also different in the way of like an artist can recognize a great song, but if they don't like emotionally connect to it, it's just kind of tough at that point to convince them to like want to put it out and for that to be a part of their like artist journey. So, you have that to play with as well.
Totally. So I kind of want to dig in a little bit more into mechanics of developing an artist. So let's gonna talk about top line. First, for those that don't know, top line is basically the songwriting, lyrics, and melody. And then, the track is the track, obviously, the instrumental. So yeah, I guess I kind of want to talk to Gino and Ellie. I think in most of the times when we're writing, at least for pop, we're starting with concepts. So yeah, I want to hear all about concepts, like choosing concepts for artists. How do you really pick what might work for them, what might not? It's so ambiguous.
I think it's really kind of about, you always want to go into like the process of creating music, I think, with the integrity. And obviously we're all musicians, we love music, but pop music is really, a consumer's market, and every artist is really a product or a brand. And I think the best and biggest and most successful artists have really carved themselves out to be a very specific brand, where anyone who, listens to a few of their songs, especially if it is someone that is well known, you can kind of pinpoint certain things that they would be, associated with or attracted to saying, or these sort of through lines that thread through a lot of their music. So, you know, if we were going to say, let's try writing a song for Ariana Grande, you sort of know the topics that she would gravitate towards, melodies that she would gravitate towards. You know, she's going to really want to sing, or you're going to want to do something that's strictly rhythmic and vibey.
Like
But I think it's sort of just like setting that intention. Yeah. I think it's sort of just like setting the intention that, you know, if I was writing a song for to pitch to Carrie Underwood, I'm not going to write, you know, a concept that would be, you know, in the club. That wouldn't make any sense. So you kind of, you know, it's still like a wide range of things that you could write about, but you also kind of still want to narrow it down to say, does this go hand in hand with what the artist is advertising themselves as? And if it's out of the box, it's sort of like hoping to pitch something that maybe would take them into the next phase of their career. Maybe they haven't done this yet. Maybe they haven't said this yet, but either from the A&R's communication with you, or just, you know, following them on social media, or kind of getting an idea of who they are, knowing where they might be at, you know, to say, I've never done this before. I've never written a love song, or I've never done a ballad. Maybe after 3 albums of up-tempo pop music, that artist is ready to do something a little bit more vulnerable or a little bit more emotional. That's how I think I kind of see it, from just trying to find those key points that sort of make that artist's DNA, and just try and tap into that and sort of elaborate on it.
That's
my favorite.
Super interesting. Go ahead, Ellie.
I was say that's like my favorite thing I think about working with you, Gino, on, you know, like writing songs together, is because like I feel like you see the bigger picture. You don't like look at an album as, you know, just a bunch of songs together. There's such a like, and I'm sure we can all agree that like during the camps that we've, you know, done together, you know, like there has been deliberate choices for each song, and a home for each song is like, you know, especially when we all can work on a project together, you know, firsthand experience being mine is like, you know, us all deliberately working on songs for different environments. Like this is one for, you know, like a slower, more at home vibe when you're like maybe reading and just like chilling and hanging out. And here's one when you want to like turn up with your friends, or like here's one, you know, like there's a purpose for every song, versus just like, I like it, let's just do it. Like, you know, which is great and fine, and inspiration can be found that way. But I do think there's something to be said about, like you said, like deliberately, you know, creating a story and a through line, and each era representing something else. And I think that song concepts can be really indicative of that, because, you know, when you are writing for other artists, if they've already said a certain thing, you want to stray away from saying what they've already said. So like, you're not going to write a song called After He Cheats for Carrie Underwood. Like, you know, she's not going to do that. She's already, you know.
Although you might.
I know, I was like, maybe. No one steal that idea. All right, I caught that. That's all mine. No, but, you know, like that's kind of, you know what they've said before. You know, Ariana probably isn't going to write a song about crying because No Tears Left to Cry. Like that's been said, that's been done. She's probably not going to write, you know, anytime soon about that. So if, you know, you've got a song that's like, I love crying, she's probably not going to do that because she just said she's got no more tears. So it's important to kind of pay attention to artists, what they've said, where they've been, and where they're looking to go.
Yeah, I always find this so fascinating, like watching Gino do this. Like it's very like deliberate how you decide like where to go conceptually, and you really like, I feel like you have this whole like forest of thought in your mind, and you're like, okay, this is like branding tree and this is like tour tree. I think stupid. But like
you don't want it to be so clinical, but I mean, I feel like a lot of people go into the songwriting process of making it almost too personal, and sometimes forgetting that you still have a huge audience who you want to relate to you and hear themselves in your music as well. It's not just about, you know, telling my story as the artist, but again, there's a reason why people would want to buy a certain product or a certain kind of makeup, because it looks great on Kylie Jenner, but it also looks good on me. You know, I bought Selena Gomez album because this is what she was going through, but I also related to it. It can't be so sort of far-fetched.
I think it's crazy that you related it to like makeup, because I don't think I've ever had this thought of like people will not buy a song, but, you know, stream a song and really relate to a song and an artist because, yeah, it's all personal. It's the same as like, oh, that lipstick looks good on Kylie, I want it. It's the same as like, oh, that song looks good on Ariana, I want to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. I'm curious. I have like my take on this, of course, but Scott, because you aim, you weigh heavily on the instrumental side, at least in this group.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you make your instrumental choices when it comes to developing a sound and how it relates to all of this kind of commercial branding type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, for pitch, it's like usually you get the kind of pitch brief from the A&R, and that gives you a direction to go into. But then I'll go and I'll like actively listen to all of an artist's stuff, like just to try to like figure out basically at the same level that Gino and Ellie were talking about with like the concepts, but kind of the instrumentals and like how, or like the tempos and what certain chord changes sound like. And I mean, this is all really abstract stuff because we're talking about the music part of music, but I'm trying to figure out like what they haven't done that's might be hot right now, like what chord changes could complement ones that they've done in the past, like kind of if there's like what kind of 808s they're using and what like how their voice sits in the mix and stuff, and like try to get that all like from an overview so that when you're kind of just sitting down, like you've already absorbed all that stuff and you can just kind of free your mind. And
yeah, I know this about you. You have so much music in your brain, so much music. And then also like really technical musical knowledge. Like I'll never forget where you heard some weird like sound like, oh yeah, that's a vuvuzela. I was like, what the fuck is a vuvuzela? Like Scott knows everything there's to know about music. It's scary.
I'm so glad that it was a vuvuzela too. Like
I will never forget that word now, ever, or the sound of a vuvuzela.
That sounds like some Dr. Seuss instrument.
It
really is. It's like a Dr. Seuss instrument.
It's such a funny word. Like I literally feel like a kid. You know how like kids think words are funny and they'll just laugh at a word for a long time. That's how I felt with that word. I will never forget it now. But I did want to ask. So this obviously makes a lot of sense with like an established artist. But what about a new artist? Like right. Let's say somebody comes to you and they're like, oh, like I need artist development, I need a song, and they haven't released anything yet. So how do you decide then?
I mean, it's just from talking to them and like everybody and like figuring out what they're listening to and like what they've done in the past. Like I'll do the same thing because usually artists come with a Dropbox of the last 12 songs that they've written, and you can go and see the stuff that they put out. And then I just have a really easy conversation with them about like, what do you want to do? And then, I mean, it's really open-ended when an artist comes to you. And I mean, because I'm working on the instrumental, I can be a little more abstract with it. And I'm just trying to like inspire people. Like that's how I work in this group of us four, is like, I just try to like churn through as many ideas on my own time as I can. And then try to come up with stuff like ideas that'll inspire. When it's tough because a lot of times you're doing stuff that's really simple and there's only so much simple stuff, but it's so specific. Like you change a BPM, 3 BPM, and it feels totally different. And like a lot of times in pop, you're working with loops. So you imagine like you're trying to make something that inspires someone, but it has to be like 15 seconds long. And you're trying to like inspire a song out of someone that way, It's
tough. I feel like you do such a good job. Like I definitely like struggle with making beats because I just like think as a songwriter more. Like I think like the thing I started doing recently is like singing over it myself, almost like a fake top line to see if anything comes to me. And if I'm like, oh, if I'm hearing a lot of stuff over this, like chances are like my crew will as well, but sometimes it doesn't work that way, but a lot of times it does, if like you just feel like, oh, like I can hear a lot of stuff over this, it could work.
Yeah, I mean I do that too, even though I don't sing as well as anybody else in here, but I'll like like when I've been trying to do some like trap beats recently, and it's like you just think of the type of melodies that you hear over that stuff, and if you can sing one, chances are that you made a reasonable approximation of a trap beat that would work.
And that's super smart. And that's like something I would advise to any producers that are listening that don't sing, that aren't singers, that don't aspire to be singers. Like you should still study top lines though, even if you're not going to be a top liner, you should still like know, like have a pretty good idea of like what kind of melodies go with this genre, what kind of melodies go with this genre, so that you can like get your tracks as close to what it needs to be for the people that are gonna come in and write on top of them. Because I
For
think
sure.
a
That's
lot
great
of times
advice.
with like new beat makers, like they just have no concept of like melody, songwriting. And I'm like, yeah, if you're gonna maybe just make instrumental music, like power to you. But if you aspire to be working with singers and rappers and top liners, you definitely need to like study that, even if it's not something you're gonna do. So
And the like to like go, one other thing about it too is like you said that I do make beats quickly. That's something that I really have studied and worked on for a long time. And that just looks like get up in the day, make a beat in 20 minutes, print an MP3, take a break, go on, do another one. And then if you do that enough, you'll be able to do it in front of people. But it just takes repetition and some confidence, because it's hard, it's scary. Like, you know, you've had your conversation about what you want to do, and then there's like silence and like 2 or 3 sets of eyes in back of you, and you're like, here, I'm gonna play a C chord, how's that feel, you know? And it's hard, like you have to just kind of do it
And
over
you
and
know,
over
like-
again.
Did you compare it to just like getting butt naked in front of like a crowd of strangers, basically hoping that everyone is loving what they're seeing, sort of?
Yeah, and you're exactly, and you're like, how does
Ellie
my
just loves
glorious
it.
naked body like make you feel the emotions of a hit song? Like,
Yeah.
Love, vulnerability, nakedness. Woo!
Or everyone just texting on their phones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're so right, Scott. It's like definitely like a vulnerable thing for sure, you know, because you just don't know what's gonna inspire other people. And sometimes, I mean, this group is very like we know each other so well, but with like new to you writers, like if it's your first time working with them, you have no idea. And it's a little bit like you're gonna like this. And sometimes it's tough because you really like it, or maybe you know your like regular crew would really like it, and then somebody new is just like not inspired by it. So you're like, okay.
Or the opposite.
I think
like,
it's really important. Sorry to interrupt, but
Go for it.
I think that's why it's kind of helpful or important when you're working with a new artist who doesn't really have that much experience, to kind of start in a territory that's familiar to them, or something that maybe they're really gravitated towards at that moment, because production can always be changed later. But if you can create sort of a space or a sound that they're already comfortable with, or subconsciously, you know, familiar enough that they feel like, oh, this is something that I could do, their imagination is sort of satisfied, and then the producers and the writers can kind of expand upon that and maybe push it into a different territory. Whereas I feel like when producers or writers really sort of just immediately steer a new artist who doesn't have very much experience, they're going in expecting, oh, I'm such a huge Ariana Grande fan, I want to do stuff like Ariana does. And then you give them, you know, I don't know, a Carly Rae Jepsen track, they're immediately sort of shut off from even wanting to explore or feel vulnerable enough to say what they might be thinking or feeling, because it's not aligning with where they want their starting point to be. You know?
I think it's like dating, right? Like if you go on a first date, you're not gonna just be like, okay, let's go back to my place. I mean, some people will, no judgment.
Yeah.
Like if you're really trying to like woo somebody, right? Like you probably will be like, here's some roses, like here's a nice dinner. Like you're trying to kind of create like a safe, like nice experience. And I think it's like that with writing. Like the first time you write with somebody, it's always just like, it probably is easier to go with like just trying to make them really comfortable with you, have them have a really wonderful experience and want to come back. And once you get to know them, you can be like, hey, like, can we please try something a little bit different? Like, and they already know you and trust you, and they can be like, yeah, I'm willing to try it with you. Like, if it doesn't work out, oh well, you
Yeah,
know?
trust is a huge thing in it. I
Yeah.
totally would agree with that.
Yeah, and it's so
Yeah.
vulnerable. It's so vulnerable, like coming into a session. Like I know we all feel this way, especially because we're all so close and we have such an established thing that like going into new sessions with different people is still scary for us. How long have we all been in this like industry and we still like going into a new session is a vulnerable thing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna throw out ideas that people may not align with, like our vibes may not match, and I'm with them for 8 hours today. Like, we're gonna be, this is on a like writer side of things, like, but imagining being an artist and like coming into a room of like, let's say it's all four of us, they're coming into a room of a very established friendship and work relationship. It can be very intimidating to come in and feel like the confidence is like big enough to want to like say their idea over what all four of us are vibing on. Like if we're all like, that's so dope, they're not going to be like, I hate that, because that's going to like be so like tough to kind of like, they don't know what we're going to react like. So it's a very important thing that, the first session with an artist, if you're developing them, like you guys have said, is like just nurturing them and just making them feel like it is a safe place to say no and to say, I don't, love that. Let's try something else. I mean, we did that the other day. Like,
Yeah.
that was
And
great.
there are artists I feel like who really do want to come into certain situations. We might have an artist come to us and say, I love what you do, so I want you to kind of do something that you see me doing, or from what I've told you I like, or what I've told you about myself, what's your take on me? I don't think that's as frequent where an artist would blindly trust an established dynamic to give them something that's probably more us than it is maybe them initially. But I do feel like it does happen in certain instances where an artist could be getting really kind of passed around to every single session in town trying to find that sound. So sometimes I think they've been through that machine long enough already to say, I'm willing to try anything. Just put me on the mic. Here's some thoughts on melodies or concepts if I have any, but I really just want you guys to sort of write your take on me.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely happens. I've had that happen where, funny enough, people have over the last year reached out to me, be like, I like your artist sound. Can you give me something similar?
And you immediately say no, just delete the email and block them forever.
No, I'm very like, sure.
It's my thing.
I'm very like, I'll give you my sound. I don't care. Like, I don't know. It's probably bad.
No, it's great, honestly, because then you're creating the popularity. You're like, damn, everybody loves my sound. Like, let's keep it going. And then you're trendsetter.
But it is rare. And I honestly don't really like doing that too. Like, not even for me, but for them, because I'm like, well, like, is that what you really want to do? Or do you just like what my songs sound like? Because, like, I think that's the hard part, is like finding what really an artist's sound is. And I kind of want to talk about it. So I think a lot of what we're talking about is like industry stuff, right? Like, even if an artist isn't like an established artist, like we're talking about the types of artists that like have management, probably have a label deal, or like signed to publishing deal being developed to get a label deal. Like, let's go back to like the beginning, right? Because I think a lot of the people that are going to be watching this are literally like young, starting out, don't have any of those things yet, like just want to try to figure out what are some of the first steps they could even begin to take to develop a sound. So I know that's like, it's almost like tough to think about that perspective at this point, but what is some advice that you guys might have for that type of person?
In terms of like developing a sound prior to maybe even being in a studio with?
Yeah, like what they could do. Yeah.
My opinion, I feel like it's tried and true. I say it all the time. The first thing that I always encourage a new artist to do is sort of write their mission statement. A condensed version of what their story is, why they're doing what they are doing as an artist, why they want to be a performer, why they want to be a singer, why they want to be a recording artist, and then getting in touch with how, like I said before, their story translates to relate and connect to a mass audience rather than, and no shade to the YouTube and TikTok and all that, all those singers who can really sing. But I feel like there's a really big chunk of time where, when The Voice was really popular and American Idol and X Factor and all that, all these amazing singers were, dominating social media singing covers, and people equated having a crazy voice or a crazy range to being a really good artist. And those singers were being put in all these sessions because they had been on this show or because they had 10 million followers from, this cover that they did. And when they get in the room, they don't know who they are. They've got great vocals, they're powerhouse singers, but they don't have a perspective. And I feel like that's the most important thing in being an artist. And in your early stages, that sort of helps you kind of draw a roadmap of, if this is the beginning of my story, then I kind of know what the next chapters are going to be, or which turns I have to take, or which hills I have to go up, and then which downswings I have to do, and go through all these sort of highs and lows and different, climaxes and peaks, and just all the different like facets of what a person's journey would be. And I feel like all you really have to do is go back and look at, some of the most timeless artists ever who've been around for decades and decades and decades. And a lot about that artist just by listening to their music, but it's never in such a way that it's intimidating to where people would listen to it and can't, again, relate or hear themselves in it. So I think before the music and before the sound, in my opinion, really comes, who are you? Why do you need to make this music? And why really do I need to listen? Why should I want to listen to what you're saying in the songs that you're going to write,
I think the
Yeah.
word that really stood out to me that you said is perspective. I have been using that word about music like a lot recently. Like, I don't know, I was like, somebody was asking me like, oh, like, I love your music. Like, why did you decide to like, put out artist stuff? And I was like, because I have a perspective and I want to express it. Like, not because I think I'm the best singer. I don't even want to be a performer, but I want to write the songs and record them because I have
Yeah.
something to say.
Yeah.
Which I think is
And
like
you see it because
actually,
it doesn't always translate with people who have these massive followings, and they put out songs, but we don't know anything about them other than the fact that they're really popular or that they had a really viral video, and then they drop an album and wake up on the release day and are sitting at home, screaming and throwing tantrums. Why am I not number one on iTunes? And it's like they're not selling anything at all because people who are invested in them in a different way don't really care about what they're doing, or have an investment in what they're doing or want to do as an artist, because that perspective, that like foundation, is not really built for music.
Yeah. Ellie, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
oh, that's
I'm not
okay.
really sorry for interrupting you.
No, you guys are on a tangent. You're on a tangent. Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah, anyway, so what I was thinking,
Damn.
one more
just
thing to
like,
add.
just. I'm just kidding. Bye. No, I mean, yeah, like definitely, like you say, perspective is like so important. And I gotta be honest with you, I did forget what I was gonna say because I just moved on. But we'll see if it comes back. Maybe I'll interrupt you, Gino, when I get it. And
Her question was, first thing that you would say to an artist who's starting out, what would be the first step?
Okay,
Thank you so
very
much. I forgot it too.
I was like, wait, what? Perspective? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me actually, like, and I think that, you all know this, considering how much we've written for Bitch together, is like, honestly, like writing for other people for years helped me a lot. It gave me a lot more, it put me in the driver's seat as like someone else, and made me go, okay, what does someone else want to think about? And then you start writing for someone else for a long time, and then you go, I have thoughts that I should probably express myself. And I don't know if Ariana Grande or Katy Perry would want to say this, but I want to say this. And I think this is important. And I think that that's like, ties back into the perspective thing of like, if you can, like, to all the new writers and producers here listening, it's like, if you can, find inspiration to write for other people and put yourself in their shoes, it will start to unveil a lot of other things within yourself that will come out and will be important to you to say. And I think that, like you said, that like ties into the mission statement. I think doing all these things simultaneously, will help really, reveal who you are as an artist.
I think that you said so important because it's like, what's really important, I think, in the beginning is just getting good at the process of not just writing songs, but like tailoring songs for different projects, because that's a skill in itself. Like just being able to like write what you feel is a very different, I mean, it's part of it, but it's a different skill than being able to like tailor for pitch, tailor for an artist, like hear out an artist that's sitting right there and figure out, oh, I think they're trying to say this. Like, I think that's a really important process. If you as an artist are like, I literally have no perspective right now, that's kind of okay. I think like I didn't have any perspective when I was 20 or whatever. I was just like, I don't know, I'm pretty, I sing.
Yeah, but you gotta
I'm the
live
most beautiful
life.
person on the planet. I don't know what else can I say. It's sort of just to keep it at that. Look in my face and just.
Yeah,
And then CoverGirl by RuPaul was born. You know, that's how these songs get inspired. You know, you just go, wow, I'm so beautiful, and they wrote a song about
they read a
it.
song. No, I mean, I think it's just really normal though, now to know. So if you don't know, maybe try to help other people. And I wouldn't even say like, you know, if you're new, don't try to like write, I don't know, Ariana Grande on Instagram and try to like, you know, get to write with her, because that's probably not gonna happen. Like maybe find like another person in your town or somebody on Instagram who's like also just starting out. Like it kind of doesn't even matter in the beginning. Just find people who you think are cool and talented and like help them, and you'll get better at that process.
Yeah.
So, but I also want to hear
super
Scott. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to, it's interesting hearing what Gino said about it, because I also think about like to paraphrase what he said in a broad sense as a producer. If you listen, what he said is, here's what happened with TikTok, here's what happened with YouTube, here's how it related to artists, and here is what I think is possible in the sense for all artists in a global sense going back 50 years or whatever. And we have to do the same thing kind of as producers. Like you have to know what's going on with the beats and with the sound and like what a kick drum sounds like right now. And that's just listening. But you also bring your taste into it with like, what do I think is possible with music? Like you have to kind of really be idealistic about it and very realistic at the same time. And then the other, for what you said, Alina, like, yeah, you have the number one thing beyond listening is just for producers is just collaborate, like with not just with everyone you want to collaborate with, just try it with everyone at first, because you're going to learn something and you're going to figure out like where you fit in and what you actually do.
What did you like that I said? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You said when you said you forgot and didn't have anything to say. That was just
He says my favorite part when you went away on the camera.
No, my favorite part is that you're just so right. Like no, I mean writing for others when you don't know what to write for yourself is totally the move. It's totally the move.
That's the same as a producer too. Like you copy, you start by copying everything, and almost like I've literally sound by sound copied certain beats before, and not because I'm trying to foist them off on someone who doesn't know any better, but just because I really think like Drop It Like It's Hot is an insane production. Like so I found the same sounds and just rebuilt that beat to like figure out how it works. And
I didn't know you've done that. That's cool. I've done that with drums, where I would literally just like pull in a song with a really good drum beat and literally try to replicate each drum hit, like just to see how it's made.
And I mean, not to name any names, but certain producers like literally do that, and then that's their song that they put out with someone.
What?
What?
Who?
I'm not naming names.
I'm just kidding.
When?
I'm like, what? I did this in like 2016. Like, okay, guys, like we don't need to.
Way to call me out on a Zoom. Jeez.
But I mean, you copy enough, and then you learn. You can learn how to copy in a way that's not actually copying. Like you make it your own. Like you switch something around, or like music is so tempo, like BPM based too, that if you sometimes just like slowing something down or speeding it up 3 BPM, like that's actually something that I learned from Gino also.
Yeah,
like
same.
the difference in a feeling and like how much
You're a
difference
teacher. You're a teacher, sir.
Mr. Barletta.
You got how many more seminars to teach after this? Like,
let's go. Sorry, Scott.
Sorry, one more thing another thing that I've heard from just like all like artists and stuff is that like you have to learn how to make yourself comfortable somehow in order to create too. So like if you're a songwriter and you're like just going to a random session at some stranger's house, you have to learn how to like ritualize it enough that you feel like you can actually have something to say. And like, so I have a ritual every time before I get into a session where I'll make sure that I do this and that, and like I'm not going to talk about what those things are.
Yeah. Drop some acid. Kids don't do acid.
Acid,
See, I knew
citric acid, just a little bit of that.
Orange juice.
Some lemon, water.
I knew this was going to be an unprofessional panel. It's fine though. I knew going.
You can put like the parental advisory sticker on this panel. Like.
I'm sorry, just chilling.
Scott drops acid and Annalise just drops ass.
I do it. That's what happened when my camera went out.
Just like drop.
Drop it like it's hot. Bringing it back to the favorite song.
It's heavy. You can't always carry it.
Sorry, what were you saying, Scott?
Sorry,
I think
Scott.
I had wrapped out of thoughts.
His undisclosed ritual.
Yeah, I think it's so important though, the comfort in the session. Yeah, I definitely get to like, that's actually kind of funny enough, was going to be my next topic. Kind of like how to create the best environment for artists as you are developing them, because it's very true that it is really vulnerable. But funny enough, it is vulnerable for the artist, of course, because a lot of the times they're also really young and they're going in a room with these adults and everybody's just kind of like telling them what to do. It can feel really overwhelming. But it also can be really overwhelming for the people on the other side too, the producers or writers. Like, I definitely, if I get like some weird vibes from an artist, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna turn my back to my computer and like pretend I'm not here. So, but yeah, so kind of what are some of your guys' rituals to create like more of that comfort? And also with artists specifically, so of course there's that bit of push and pull. You want them to like the song, right? You want them to go back to the label or management, whatever, be like, I love the song, I'll put out the song. But at the same time, you don't want to pander to their sensibilities so much that you lose like the commerciality of it and, making sure that it works for a wider audience. So kind of how do you actually find that balance in a session?
That's the hardest part, I think, because you sort of don't want to be a helicopter parent, of this child or, undeveloped artist that you're fostering. But in certain instances, you also have to be. You're trying to sort of like hop back and forth between being that way and then letting them, throwing them in the pool without floaties and hoping that they don't drown. And then they almost drown and you're like, okay, I guess I have to go back in the pool now, grab them out and throw them on.
I guess.
I think, if it's a new session and you're actually in person with the artist, I like to sort of, Scott had said this earlier too, just spend as much time in the beginning as you can just talking, provided you have a lot of time to do that if everyone's not sort of on this crunch. Food is always, I feel like a good gateway to kind of just like commune and really break bread together and open up and sort of just like peel back a little bit of the layers before you dive in and say, okay, we got to make something great. For us, I think the difficulty is we always want to make something that the whole world is going to hear. We don't want to make something that'll be a B-side or a deep cut that never comes out. So our goal is make a great song that hopefully would be a single or would end up on the radio or, be a really, really highly streamed song on Spotify. So we know the sort of the mathematical or, formulaic side of things, and undeveloped artists only sort of really are in touch with the emotion of it or the vibe or sounds or whatever. So you kind of, I feel like, have to find that balance. And sometimes it happens really naturally and sometimes it's really difficult. And sometimes you fail, sometimes the artist is really trying to push and say, I want to be the next Ariana Grande, but I don't want to be pop. I don't want to be too pop. It's like, I want to have a top 10 hit, but I don't really want a radio song. And you're trying to understand, like, are they wanting to play to this global audience or are they wanting to do this underground thing? If they are aiming for, the top of the charts and to be among the most successful people, then those mathematical and formulaic things that we all have sort of studied and come to know so deeply have to come into play. It's just about how hard do you press that on someone who doesn't even understand those things in that first session. But when you don't, I feel like we've all been there where on occasion you let the artist kind of take a little bit of the lead because they're not responsive to maybe our insight or our way of crafting a song. Then we leave the session and say, well, that was our only day with that artist and we didn't get a song that the label is going to love, because there's nothing maybe memorable about it or it's not special. Sure, the artist got to get their feelings out, but they're not going to call us back because we didn't make an insane record, So I think it's really just about knowing you're not going to connect with every single artist. It is a lot like dating. It's all based on chemistry. Sometimes you're going to meet someone and it's just not going to click because there's either a resistance from them or a resistance from you to not let those walls fully down. And then there are instances where it just happens as soon as you meet and the ideas can sort of be flowing back and forth. No one's taking offense to anything. Everyone's super open-minded to trying different things and having the same goal. I feel like when the goal is different at the start of a session, then how do you accomplish it? One person says, I want to be, on Paper Magazine's like best indie acts, and the four of us are wanting, our BMI award or like, the Grammy or the, diamond plaque, whatever. So I feel like it really is just like about the intention that everyone is trying to go for, but you get that by having a great conversation if you can,
Yeah, and I think you're right. It is hard, and sometimes like you will fail. Like we fail. Like you just don't connect with the person. You really, really, really try, and
Yeah.
it's
And you have to accept that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sucks, especially if it's an artist that you're passionate about or is on the rise and you really want to be part of a project. But if it doesn't happen, then, trying to force that is like trying to fall in love with someone that, you don't really even like.
And it's not a reflection on your creativity and how you do
Right.
things. It really is just like a chemistry thing. Like it really does go back to dating and for all of you new songwriters and producers, usually when you sign with publishers or with managers, anything like that, the team typically expects you to go into this like year or two of like dating collaborators, like not actually dating them, but going into new sessions every day, 5 days a week, trying out different teams until you find one. Whereas like the one we have right now of the four of us is so strong, and until you find your like pockets of people that you really like turn over great records all the time, that dating process can be a little daunting. But for all of you, hoping to be signed to management and publishers and labels and things like that, just know that that's a typical way of being an everyday writer, and to like find those people. But to answer your question, Alina, about making artists feel comfortable, I mean,
you're really good at it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm an artist myself, so I mean, I would hope to be good at it.
The perspective is there. You know what you like, so you know what others might like.
Yeah, I definitely like try to make sure I'm always viewing at least like this process through their lens and like through what they're going through, and trying to take myself out of it for a second and be like, yeah, I would be a little intimidated too if I came into this room and everybody's just kind of moving really, really fast, especially for the artists that aren't writers first. That is more common these days, and kind of always. I feel like that's like always, there's always been a group of artists who you have the amazing like songwriter artists that Ed Sheeran's, Taylor Swift's, who are pretty self-sufficient, but then you also have the artists who their main thing is performing and being more of a personality and being a singer and stuff like that. Like you talked about, Gino, with people from The Voice and from American Idol. Like you do have people, especially now that I think on those shows they allow you to play your originals, but back 10 years ago when American Idol was happening, you couldn't play originals. And, you know, so it only just, you had to be a good singer. Like that was all that really mattered. So then you got these people coming into sessions who are these great singers, and, you know, they don't really know how to write songs, and that's totally fine. But, you know, the
They don't
process,
always want to own that.
yeah, there's definitely a group of people who, you know, are still figuring out what they want and don't know what that is yet. But definitely haven't given up on the idea that they may not have that fully figured out yet.
I've never written a song before, but I know how this song will be written much better than you.
That's definitely always the awkward time, is when you're just like I think we're just on two different wavelengths here.
It's so hard. Yeah, it's because you kind of just like, you kind of get mad, but at the same time you get it that they're insecure. It's just like a weird vibe.
Yeah, I think it's all just like connecting, and like I try my best to just like you said, Gino, with like food and stuff, just hanging out, just talking, just really seeing if you click. I mean, I know this isn't how typically things are done, but I know Alina and I in our past, like we love just getting on the phone and just like talking and seeing, and I know you do this too, all of it. We all
Yeah.
when we're together and when we're not, is like just talking to the people we're about to be working with and just seeing if it's a vibe, because, you know, after a while, like I said, that it can be very tiring, you know, going into new sessions all the time, and, you know, 1 out of every 20 is like amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's
you know,
so exhausting. I just want to interject for a second. I think like you and I, Ellie, have been lucky because we, in the beginning, like before we met you guys, like we went into everything like just the two of us, and it helps to have like your second in command or first in command, whatever, like your partner, because like I definitely, like between the two of us, Ellie's more like sociable. I guess I can be very personable, but if I feel weird with the person, I'm bad at faking being like cool with them. Like I'm very just like, oh, I can shut down a little bit, like, and it's like very obvious. So, and if like I love him, it's like a great vibe or whatever. But I think like between the two of us, like you're just very like patient with people, and like you'll give them many chances, right? And like I will just like kind of turn my back and produce and focus on what I'm doing, like technically, musically, and that kind of works because like you can really tend to them personally while I'm just like working on the track, and that's super important. I don't like on like the earlier like stage of things, like advice for beginners, I never hear that, like how important those interpersonal skills are. And some people just like won't have them. Like a lot of producers, like we won't have them because it's also really hard to do that while you're trying to like technically like run a computer and all these things, also to like hang out with people. It's like kind of too much. So if you can have
asking
a partner
about someone's relationship while you're trying to like EQ a sound is like
it's like, yeah,
kind of juggling.
It's I can do that. Like Scott, I'm sure you really, I don't know, like I know you don't have like a permanent partner that goes to things with you, so I don't know how do you do it. Like this is so like tough.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I get spoiled because I work with a lot of like top liners, like amazing people, and they end up doing a lot of that kind of like emotional labor, and I've gotten a little lazier about doing that. But
he still doesn't even know what my last name is, and I've known him for like what, 9 years.
I see it right there. It's Barletta music.
Barletta music.
But yeah, so but I used to have to do that a lot more, and like I liked to say what Ellie was saying. Like the first thing is like, one, it's not about you. That's so important for producers to understand. Like you really are there at the service of someone else, and you're there to try to like inspire them and take their idea and craft it into something that's bigger than either of you thought. But it's also you just listen as much as you can, and then you get like, you have to learn how to just, when you listen, to like be excited and to be enthusiastic about someone's like journey and like what they like, and get excited about what they're excited about.
That's my favorite thing with Gino, is like I'll say something, and 3 sessions later he'll be like, hey, remember that thing you said that one time? And I'm like, no, absolutely forgot that.
You have a crazy memory.
Yeah, he'll like just soak up everything, and, you know, especially for like artist stuff, but even just like for pitch stuff as well. It's like, you know, all 3 of you, I just like are so incredible what you do, and just like have so much brilliance behind like each methodical thing, that I'm just so lucky to like be a part of this team. But also just like seeing how this machine works, like it's so inspiring, and I'm glad that we all are getting to like talk about this together, because we've also never done anything like this, but it's like
This is
really
fun.
cool. Yeah, I think it's cool to kind of dissect what we do, because then like, I mean, we're gonna write a song after this. So it's like, getting to do that after having these like conversations is gonna be, it's so charged and so cool that we can like, come in with so much like, knowledge of what everyone else does and how much recognition we all have for each other, which I think is really good for anybody starting out, is like looking for these kinds of things, looking for collaborators that you can like not only like ebb and flow with, but like appreciate how their brain works, and like how they listen, how they pay attention, like what kind of things like makes their process special. And when you have that, it really is just like magic.
And people you can tear apart and tear down and criticize and just expose their weakest points.
So
Me
you
just
go
like-
home and cry.
That is also really, we're not even on the question anymore, but that's important that everyone, when you're collaborating, can really be at times. Sometimes you don't have time for like the niceties that you do when you're meeting an artist for the first time, and you need to just be like, I got to be brutally honest, Alina, that sound is not good. Or you might say, hey, I think this concept is great in theory, but you guys are writing it horribly. You know what I mean? It's just,
Oh, I want to try that. I don't think I've ever said that in our session.
I mean, well, there's a reason, why it's never been said to us, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, a grand hypothetical, situation.
Like, I hate your outfit, like you look so bad today, your hair is ugly, all those things.
But even, hey, I mean, when we first kind of started taking this road on the artist path with Elli, in the beginning, there were things that I had personal thoughts about with regards to, what her ideas were or tastes were. And at a certain point, I was like, I'm not going to be able to be truly creative with her unless I can give my really honest feedback. And it doesn't mean that my opinion is what should dictate what happens, but it is my opinion. If she said, hey, do you love this concept? And I would say, it's a good concept, but I don't think it's amazing, or I don't think it's great for where you want to go. Or, hey, here's 5 videos that I'm thinking about pulling inspiration from. And I would reply and I would say, these are my 5 least favorite videos of all time. Like,
that actually did happen. That happened.
Really?
She
sent me one video, and I thought she was kidding. I was like, ha ha ha, this video is awful. And she's like, oh, okay. I actually thought it was, cute.
Well, I mean, that's the thing
important.
too. Yeah, we're like learning, and especially like, as we're doing this more, it's like we're learning to find that like, okay, here's what I'm inspired by. And he knows me really, really well. So, and all of you do, like, so in so many different facets, but it's like, as we're developing my project more, it's like, there are parts of my personality that may not be ready to be shown yet. You know what I mean? Like they're like, we've talked about certain song concepts where I've been like, let's go balls to the wall on this concept. And there's been like, conversations where, Gino will be like, hey, like, I like that we're wanting to talk about this, but I don't think we should go full in depth on it yet. Like, let's give a tease of like what this is, so that in, 5 years down the line, we can go balls to the walls about this idea. But I don't think we should, come right out the gate talking about how much weed you smoke, girlfriend. Like maybe maybe we pull back on that a little bit, or whatever it is,
I think it's
not that I smoke weed. I don't do drugs.
Sure. I think it is actually really interesting. I love that, like those videos are my least favorite videos. I love that example. I kind of want you guys to try to remember some examples, especially like sonically, of kind of how we've elevated your sound, Elli, because like to give everybody sort of a perspective, Elli and I used to work on her project, just the two of us. And I'll be the first person to say, I don't have like the kind of like planning, branding skills that Gino has, like for other artists. I'm more just like, oh, I want to write a really dope song, or like make a great track, but it is harder for me to be the person that's like branding tree, tour tree, style tree. You know, it's like a very specific skill. So I think, and also you were quite a bit younger as well too when we started working on your music, and we've talked about it from when you were even younger. So I think one of the things about the sound was that it just really kind of aired young, like very teenagey, very like boopy cute. So I want to like kind of hear, I mean, I've been saying this, but for everybody that's watching, like how we've taken those concepts and just like matured them, elevated them to where they're at now.
Elevated them.
Oh, not that anyone knows what that means, but
I mean, I met her apart from you, so I hadn't even met you, you know, until a bit after. And the scenario where we met each other, we were both there as writers, but I saw very quickly that I saw her as a performer and as an artist, and I was hearing her sing things and in ways that were completely different than what she was quickly thereafter doing in her music, where I felt like it was sort of this small box that she was living in within her project, and me knowing her on a personal level, and then also knowing her as a writer. When we were writing a lot together, there were a lot of different facets that I felt like were kind of either not being capitalized on, or just were being maybe, you know, forgotten about, or just not seen, because the perspective that you guys had as her, of her as an artist, was only from two sets of eyes and two sets of ears. And I mean, it's always, again, I feel like that's the greatest part about collaborating, when you can meet people who can really give constructive criticism or just opinions that actually resonate in a way to say, hey, maybe I really haven't been pushing myself, or maybe I've been kind of resting on my laurels, or what's easy, or this is really good, you know, but are we sitting around challenging every little thing? And I think everyone in this Zoom can vouch for the fact that I will be the person who will write a record that we love, and then 10 weeks later I'll be on the text thread being like, I don't know, I feel like maybe this lyric could change, or this melody could be better, or, you know, that vocal is great but it's not a 10, or maybe we could revisit the production. And I'll kind of like cycle almost obsessively over things when, for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel like it's 100% locked in. And can we make it better? Can we beat that? Can we just try to see how many options we can exhaust before we really all are like, this is undeniably great? Again, it's all subjective. So, I mean, we could make an album that we think is the best thing in the world, and everyone could think it's absolute trash, but we would still stand behind it because we've, you know, dug and dug and dug and dug to the depths of it. And I feel like that's what I was seeing when I wasn't involved, was that there was a lot of stuff that was on the surface that came naturally and was really good and could happen, you know, fairly quickly to be putting out content. But it was like the surface was only like just being scratched, you know?
I felt like, you know, something that Alina and I did really well was like, you know, really sticking to the brand that we had established, and like very much like you said, like the resting on the laurels and being very like, okay, everything's gotta be pink, everything's gotta be sugary sweet, which, you know, is one facet of my, you know, being and of like who I am. But I think, you know, what, you know, we've all brought, I think, into this is my dimensions, and like making me a more multi-dimensional artist versus a just like one trick pony. You know, and I think that I'm so grateful for that. And I think that, you know, I like wear black now. Like, how crazy is that? Like, this is probably the first time this group has seen some me wear some black, which is crazy. Like, I had a friend who literally was like, saw me in black and was like, what is happening? Like, this is crazy. I've never seen this, because I had such a strict, you know, in my own mind, no one was, you know, making me do anything, but, you know, like I had such a, you know, a box that everything had to fit in and had to run through. And if it didn't, you know, make it through the box, then it was like cut, you know?
Yeah. And I think like a lot of that stuff, you ran a lot of that kind of branding decision as well. And I was very like, whatever she wants, you know,
which is fun.
Because I discovered this about myself too. Like, even now as an artist, like I literally don't know a lot of things for myself, I'm just like, I just write what I feel and I produce it how I feel. But like, even with clothes, I like our stylist Ryan, I'm just like, Ryan, will you just put me in stuff that you think is cool? Because I trust her more than I trust myself. So I guess like on that aspect. So I guess it's like what is being, I'm trying to say is like a team is super important. Like
Mhm.
everybody contributing something that they're brilliant at. Like even with your current songs or sound, I think like Scott's guitar playing has been like a really huge part of that because I don't play guitar that well, and especially I don't play electric. And like your electric sound, Scott, I feel like has really been the underpinning of a lot of these songs. And I think it adds, because everything else is like pretty electronic on them. So it adds like a really nice organic quality to them, which I think really matches Ellie because you're not like a plastic bitch, really. Like, you know, you're like very genuine, down to earth, but like also like a badass at the same time. So like
Thank you.
in my mind, like both things live through like the electronic, like more of the drums and stuff aspect of the tracks, plus like the guitars. Like the music to me matches the person.
Mhm.
Anyway, I don't really know what I'm trying to say. I'm rambling.
No, I like it. Yeah, it's definitely been such a journey, and I think, you know, even Scott having been involved on the record with Stomach, like right before my record Confection or EP Confections, right before you know, we all started like officially working together on my project. You know, I think it's just been such a slow burn. Like Gino, I just remember you have always been like, I'm just gonna be in the background until it makes sense for me to like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a big part of it too, right? Was when you were planning to release these songs and you played them for me, and I said, I think they're great. I don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's all of you. Yeah, it's part of you that you guys have sort of crafted and put together. And I remember we had that talk where I said, I think you should move forward by doing all of this so that you can kind of flesh out what you see yourself as and feel like you never had, you know, that missed opportunity in hindsight of being like, oh, I never tried the things that I thought I was or the way that I saw myself. And again, when you're dealing with pop music and pop artists, you do want that artist to have a perspective. However, if it's all about how they see themselves, then that connection or that relation to a really big audience might not be happening because there aren't as many critical eyes around saying, can we try this instead? Can we maybe, you know, reproduce that song in a totally different way so that she can still say that or, you know, sing these melodies, but them not sound as youthful or, you know, princessy, whatever, you know, whatever word you're
Yeah,
using.
just
I also
more
feel
what
like
I
it was a
am.
lot of, yeah, I think what you were doing at the time was also a huge product of the other projects that you both were working on, you know,
Yeah, we worked with a lot of like teenagers.
very young. Yeah.
No,
young
I
artists.
mean, and that's a huge point, Gino, too. It's like a lot of what you work on, not for yourself, will straight up inspire what you work on for
Mhm.
yourself. Like I definitely like feel like the four of us melodies, like literally leaking into my own artist project. Like I will write things and I'll be like, this sounds just like something Gino would write.
I know, and then I have to contact my attorney and say, you know, sue her for publishing because
Sue
that's
this
my melody.
bitch.
I
Great.
claimed it.
Cool. We'll talk about that later. No, but it's true. It's just very like, yeah, it's everything kind of merges with itself. So again, it's back to like having the team and having the people around you that can support that growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Louder
and
than-
like from when I stepped into this project too, it's like you guys are such a like Alina and Elli, you're such an effective team at writing together. So like I remember when we did Stomach, it was kind of like, oh, I know that you could just like finish this record. Like I could do a loop and we could finish that record. Like you would have it done in like 2 hours. But then I think I was listening to actually like Billie Eilish at the time, and I was like, why don't we put a section in there that's just totally different, like that feels like a stop in the record. And I remember that was like really exhilarating at the time. And like honestly, like this group is so cool because like I feel like it allows me to take kind of bigger chances like that because everybody's already so competent that I don't actually need to do very much. But like having the freedom to be like, I know everything is going to be a certain level of like competence, it just allows it allows us to try to kind of like bring in other ideas and try different things that we haven't done before.
Absolutely.
But with the guitar thing, like, thank you, Alina. That's very nice. And I mean,
It's
part of
true.
that was just a process of like hearing how much guitar is in music right now, because I honestly stopped playing guitar for years because you weren't hearing a guitar in, 2012 or whatever. Like, it was all other stuff,
There's nothing like a guitar or like a piano, just like stripping it down to basics. I know we can all attest to that. Like, if we aren't figuring something out, like Gino just hops on the piano, Scott guitar, Alina piano or guitar, someone just hops on something. And, like,
Ellie's on the vuvuzela.
I'm on the vuvuzela. I'm dropping ass. I'm really just there for inspiration. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally hear you, Scott. Yeah, it's I think these days it's like the more you can bring to the table, I think as a producer, like various skills, the better it is. Like that you play and you play so well. It's just such a big contributing factor to this team because it's just a different type of inspiration. So, for those that are instrumentalists, I'd be like, this is your time, shine. Right now it's the time. And those that are more electronic, that's cool too. Maybe do find some people to collaborate with that play other instruments.
Yeah, find a great something player, because like it's, you can really have a career right now just like sampling yourself if you're a good instrumentalist, and like it really seems to be the moment for that. It's not going to last forever.
It all goes.
The music will go to shit again.
Great. So on that cheerful.
No, I mean, it'll be something else. Like, it'll be something great, and like you're gonna be surprised. Like, every 7 months, music changes, and I'm like, what? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think this has been a lot of stuff for people to process, and such a fun panel. Not really a real panel, just us talking over each other.
We did a good job, I have to say. Like, we did a really good job waiting for everybody to finish. Whereas normally in our sessions,
no, yeah,
I would say, but if I when that was it.
Yeah. No, honestly, this is so fun. I feel like this has been like really great information. Just to kind of reiterate for people that are really, really new, I think it's just like not being really afraid to like collaborate with people and not being afraid of bad collaborations, because they are going to happen and you kind of have to go through them to get to the good ones. Like, we all have been through them, and that's just kind of part of the process. So don't be afraid of them. And if you're literally just like brand new, you're not in LA, you're somewhere else, and you're just like, what do I do? You literally just go on the internet.
Stay there, don't come. Brand new, not in LA. Stay put. Stop practicing.
Don't listen to him. No,
Don't need
seriously.
Get out while you can.
Get out while you can. Leave. No, yeah, definitely. You just need those hours. You just need all of those hours collaborating with people. And that's where all of those wonderful developmental things come from. Because even just like listening to this with like a tiny bit of a detachment, not too much because I'm so in it as well, but just listening to you guys talk, I'm like, what we do is hard. Just so many like abstract concepts are being just discussed. I'm like, this is probably extremely overwhelming to somebody starting out. So yeah, the only way to like really fully be like, yeah, I understand all of these aspects of development is just to do it a lot, like do it a ton with many people. And then if you have the talent, you will pick up the understanding and the knowledge.
And if you don't?
And if you don't?
There's other wonderful pathways. Okay. Well, on that note, I think I'm going to cut pretty much here. Guys,
thank you, Alina.
Guys, thank you so much for being here. This is super, super fun. And then now we can get off camera and be like really unprofessional.
And now I can come in the other room because I've been in the kitchen. So
you've been in the kitchen. You can come in here now.
Thank
All
you.
all right, thank you guys. Thank you for being at the Modern Music
Thanks.
Expo. Goodbye.